Hey YouTube, it's that time again. We're going to be talking about motherboards. This is going to be a motherboard tier list video. This is the 2025 addition to last year's X870E tier list video that we did. That video has been very popular on this channel, and I've gotten a whole lot of requests to do an updated version of that. So here we go. We're doing it now. With the holiday season fast approaching, people are probably looking at new builds, despite the fact that DRAM prices are kind of crazy right now. But if you're in the market for a motherboard or a new PC, you can take advantage of some pretty good Black Friday deals for a lot of these motherboards. So just, you need to be aware of what you're trying to do with your build. There's no one size fits all when it comes to choosing a motherboard. It's always going to come down to the actual end use case, how you're going to be using the computer, what are you doing with the computer? Is it a workstation? Is it a gaming PC? Is it an editing PC, machine learning, AI, whatever? Those are the sort of things, because the motherboard that you choose will determine what you can and cannot do with your PC. So it's a pretty big decision in the long run compared to choosing one graphics card, for example, out of a sea of different RGB lights. So let's get into it. So what I have here is the old motherboards from last year are already on the tier list. They're basically carried over from last year with a few changes. The ProArt got downgraded from A to B, and then the Valkyrie got upgraded from B to A. But other than that, everything else has stayed the same in terms of where they fit in the current market, in the current state of things. So I saw no reason to change any of these other ones. So with that being said, there's a lot of new motherboards. And when I went to go look at X870E motherboards, I started thinking, hey, there actually is a lot of new motherboards. So to start off with the MSI Meg Ace, this motherboard, you can't actually order it right now at time of filming, but this is basically a $700 version of the MSI Godlike, which lacks some of the bells and whistles and the added flair that the Godlike includes, such as the dynamic dashboard that the Godlike has, and some other things. It still retains the 10 gigabit LAN that the Godlike features, as well as the dual GPUs, as well as the dedicated X4 slot at the bottom. So it has basically all the same stuff that the Godlike includes, minus the dashboard, minus the EATX form factor, but you're still getting essentially the same hardware under the hood. So for that reason, the Ace is going to go in S tier. Even though we don't have the ability to order one, the price is going to be around the price of a Hero, but it has 10 gig LAN, where the Hero doesn't. But the Hero might place equal to this board because of other features that ASUS has, like Nitro Path, Q-Latch, that kind of thing. So moving on to MSI's next motherboard that's new for X870E in 2025, we have the Edge Ti. So the X870 MPG Edge Ti. So this motherboard is essentially the Tomahawk with additional quality of life balances. One of them being fully toolless M.2s for all of the SSD heatsinks. On the Tomahawk, you need a screwdriver for the two SSDs in the middle. To be able to install those, you have to use a screwdriver. With the Edge, you don't have to do that. It's fully toolless. It uses the exact same latch mechanism that the Godlike uses for all of the heatsinks, so that's really nice. But it doesn't really do anything outside of the ordinary, so I'm going to go ahead and say that the Edge Ti is a A-tier board. It is well priced. It's a balanced motherboard. Doesn't really do anything wrong. It utilizes the bandwidth sharing functionality to provide you a second Gen 5 SSD, similar to the Tomahawk and the Godlike. So because of that, we're placing this in A tier. Next up is the X870E Tomahawk. If you watched last year's X870 video, you would have seen the X870 version was kind of an S tier motherboard, or like an S plus motherboard. It was like a one of a kind because it was like at $300. And it had the postcode debug, and it had all the heat sinks and everything. This is basically the same motherboard, except now it has the second chipset, so it has a little bit more connectivity capabilities and less lane sharing, and it has the bandwidth sharing over USB 4. It carries over all the benefits of the X870 version, while providing a little bit more connectivity. So for that reason, at similar price point, you can find probably the Tomahawk for the best deals this holiday season. So this is one that you're going to want to be looking for. The reason why it's not S compared to the non-E version is because the competition in the X870E realm is much steeper. Here we're looking for the best of the best. And the Tomahawk, it's still a really good board, but it's going to be an A tier board. Next we have probably MSI's most interesting motherboard. So this is going to be the Tomahawk Max Wi-Fi PZ. So the unique thing about this motherboard is this is a BTF motherboard from MSI. You can see on the front there is no connectors facing the front side. It has all the heat sinks, everything is covered up. It has this really clean look. It has the postcode debug up there. But this is going to be for someone who is looking to do a white-based build with a BTF motherboard. So kind of rare, and for that reason, it's sort of a class in its own. So this is going to be the S tier board out of all of MSI's new ones that are truly unique, because you haven't really seen a lot of BTF boards come out from MSI. This one might cater to a specific crowd. It's almost like a specialist motherboard. So for that reason, we're going to give this the S tier rating. The last two motherboards from MSI, so we have the Pro and we have the Gaming. So the Pro, it's going to be in B tier. It might even be in C tier. I mean, there's stuff about this board that I don't like in particular. Number one, they call it Pro, but it doesn't have like basic diagnostic things, like you don't have the postcode debug. So as far as I'm concerned, if a motherboard doesn't include postcode debug, it automatically can't score higher than B. B is as good as it can get. So this motherboard, no postcode debug. The I/O is fairly standard stuff. They have a clear CMOS button on the back, so that's good. One thing that's also not good, though, it doesn't have heat sinks for the second and third NVMe. This is also, strangely enough, this is X870E, but it has only 3 NVMe drives instead of 4. Now, I get that MSI is providing dedicated X4 over PCIe, which is useful for some people, namely people who want to install like capture cards and stuff. But I think for the average user in this price point of somewhere around $300, you're better served with one of the other motherboards like the Tomahawk. So this personally for me is going to be a pass. I would say this is going to be either B or C, to be honest. Like I don't know. Like there's stuff about it that I question why they did things the way they did. So I'm probably going to put this one in C for now. So next we have the Gaming. So the Gaming plus Wi-Fi. So this is essentially the exact same motherboard as the Pro-P. The main difference is this one actually has heat sinks on the second and third NVMe. It still doesn't have the postcode debug, but it does have the included heat sinks for all of your SSDs. So that automatically makes it better than the Pro. As far as the PCIe lane layout allocation goes, is exactly the same as the Pro. So for that reason, this one is probably going to be B. It's either B or C. But if this one doesn't have heat sinks and this one does have heat sinks for all the SSDs, that's going to be the key differentiating factor there. So if you're looking at that more budget range and you're trying to figure out, well, should I get the Pro or should I get the Gaming Plus? Go with the Gaming Plus. It's going to give you, at least it gives you heat sinks. You don't have to bring your own. All right, so now we're moving on to ASUS. ASUS introduced 4 new X870E motherboards for this year. To start off, we're going to start off with the Crosshair Extreme. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the Crosshair Extreme, well, before we give the rating, let's go ahead and look at it a little bit. So the Crosshair Extreme, this is a $1,000 flagship from ASUS. This represents the pinnacle of the enthusiast motherboards from ASUS. It has all the overclocking features. You can see all that stuff down here. It's got the proprietary technology like Nitro Path. It has the external base clock overclocking capabilities. So if you're somebody who wants to get improved single thread, specifically single thread performance on an X3D CPU, like a 9950 X3D, for example, which is the perfect CPU to pair up with a motherboard like this, you can totally do that with the ROG Crosshair Extreme. It also has enterprise grade functionality like the Slim SAS connector down here. So it has that. It has the DIMM.2 to add 2 more Gen 4 SSDs, as well as everything being right-angled connected. So it is kind of like, it's not a BTF motherboard, but it is a unique style decision where all these connectors are right-angled. It is also an EATX motherboard. You can see it's EATX just by looking at the right screw hole up at the top and then looking to the right of it, and there's more motherboards, so that means it's EATX. And that means that it's going to be limited to the sort of cases that can support this motherboard, because you need a really long case, because first of all, this motherboard is EATX. Second of all, it has all right-angled connectors, so you're going to have to run your power, like your 24-pin, all this stuff. It's going to have to run at a right angle, which means it's going to take more space to the right side of this motherboard, which means you have to have a very long case. So it's kind of niche. It has the dual RTX 5090 capabilities because it has the awesome X8 Gen 5 slots right there. So that's really nice to see. I would have liked to have seen an X4 slot that either shares lanes with an SSD or something, but they did give a Slim SAS, so that's also kind of a nice feature. They basically fixed all the shortcomings that the Hero had, but they are charging you $300 over the Hero for this board. One of those things is they added the 10 gig LAN that was lacking on the Hero. They also added 2 more Type A 10 gig USB ports. And that's really nice to see, because I don't like when a motherboard has empty space on the back here. I want to see them fully populate the back I/O with as many things as possible. So being a $1,000 motherboard, it doesn't disappoint in that area. That's really good to see. So backplate, everything you'd expect on a motherboard of this price point. It has some kind of fan here that looks like it's for RAM cooling that you would mount it at the top or something. So that's really good for overclockers or those wanting to push high RAM clocks. Really good server-grade PCB. Overall, though, there are some shortcomings with this board. I don't like that it only physically has 3 SSD slots on the board. I get that they include the DIMM.2 for the 2 Gen 4 SSDs. If you're someone who doesn't like GPU lane sharing and you want to run all the SSDs while no GPU lane sharing happens, you're going to be forced to use the DIMM.2 for both SSDs. You're going to use the Gen 5 SSD, and then you're going to have to use the Slim SAS to get 4 NVMe drives while still providing 16 lanes to the GPU. If you use the second and third SSD, either one of them or both of them, as soon as you use either one of those that are on the board, your GPU runs at 8 lanes on this motherboard, and you also can't install a second GPU, or you can't even use the second slot at all. So it does have some lane sharing, resource sharing. People are not going to like hearing that, considering this is a $1,000 board. That is the reality of what ASUS chose to do. So because of that, this is going to be an A-tier motherboard. Yes, ASUS's flagship motherboard is an A-tier motherboard for the reasons that I just pointed out. Because there are other motherboards that can do similar things, similar tricks and gimmicks to the ROG Extreme while costing less and providing you less compromise. But we'll get into that shortly. So next up we have the Apex. So the Apex represents the overclocking community within the Republic of Gamers. So the Crosshair Apex, this is going to be a 2 DIMM motherboard. That's kind of a dead giveaway that this is an overclocker's board, because with 2 DIMMs you can push the memory well above DDR5 8000 speeds. It also includes a dedicated cooling system to provide active cooling to the RAM, so you can blast cold air over the RAM, allowing you to push those memory clocks up. It doesn't have NitroPath because it doesn't need NitroPath, because this only has 2 sticks of memory. You can still, if someone wanted to use this as kind of like a home lab workstation or whatever, they could still technically do it. You can run 2 64 gig DIMMs, so a total of 128 gigabytes of RAM, which across 2 sticks. And the nice thing about it, though, it has a dedicated X4 slot physically above the GPU. It's really nice to see this kind of layout for the PCIe slots, because rather than putting it way down at the bottom, you can put it up at the top. So you could put in like a capture card above your GPU, and you can still make use of the bottom X8 slot for a second graphics card. So really, really good. It's kind of weird. In some ways, the Apex does things with the PCIe layout better than the Extreme. Like the Extreme basically traded the X4 slot for a slim SAS interface, where the Apex just gives you straight up 4 lanes of PCIe Gen 4. So that's really nice to see. It's practical, it's standard ATX, it has overclocking features like these extra switches, voltage checkpoints, all that stuff. Postcode debug as expected at this price point. This is a $750 MSRP motherboard. Overall, DIMM.2 included, everything's there. This is a really, really good board. Even though it's meant for overclockers, it's more of like a specialist product. It has a lot of things. It has the PS-by-2 port. It has a lot of USB Type A. I actually really think the Apex, despite it being a specialist motherboard, is actually ASUS's S-tier board out of all the boards that it launched this year. It's $750. The one thing that I will dock it for is the lack of a 10 gigabit LAN, but for what they're trying to do with this motherboard, I don't think it's necessary. And kind of the things, the thoughtful way that they've done the PCIe layout, the practicality, the performance capabilities, I think the Apex just encompasses the full enthusiast package. So this is going to be an S-tier board from ASUS. So the last two motherboards from ASUS, we've got the gaming, or the Strix. We've got the Strix -H gaming Wi-Fi 7. So this motherboard is more of like a more budget-friendly motherboard, but there's things about it that I don't like. First of all, no postcode debug. That means that the best this can do is going to be B tier. Who wants to be troubleshooting PC problems that could crop up and being in the dark on terms of like what could possibly wrong? The other problem with ASUS boards is ASUS doesn't allow you to plug in the buzzer or the case speaker, so you don't have any audio cues to rely on. Like, for example, post beeps. 4 beeps means you have a dead GPU or you haven't connected your 8-pin connectors, for example. So you don't have that on ASUS motherboards anymore. And when you take away audio diagnostics and now you take away visual diagnostics, and you basically relegate the motherboard to only giving you, like 4 LEDs to try to tell you, oh, DRAM LED, power LED, whatever, CPU LED, boot LED. Those are not good things when they taketh away and give you nothing in return. So this motherboard is definitely it's got that B tier vibe because of that. It does have good heat sinks overall. It's not like it's leaving SSDs with no heat sinks to cool them. The back I/O is fully featured. You can see here it does have the clear CMOS button. It has triple monitor setup, all that stuff. So overall, it's okay. It's okay. It's not like an awful motherboard. But it is going to be a B tier motherboard. I mean, it's not doing anything special. And then next we have the TUF Gaming. The TUF Gaming is in a really weird spot. It's in a rough spot. This used to be a recognized brand that people enjoyed, people respected. It used to be called Sabertooth, the TUF Sabertooth series from ASUS back in the day. It has been downgraded over the years to lower tier statuses because ASUS, I guess, has tried to push Strix higher up, and they've taken TUF down the elevator and Strix went up the elevator. So kind of weird analogy there. But first of all, no postcode debug. It does have basic stuff, like you've got basic looking heat sinks here. However, one NVMe does not have a heat sink. Just keep that in mind. Slot layout is generic. It has an X1 Gen 3 slot, not open, it's closed, so it's very limited on what you can connect in there. I guess you can connect a sound card in there for the few people that are doing something like that. I mean, it doesn't even have a dedicated gallery page, so it's like, it's hard to say, like, okay, what's on the back panel. I assume it's okay. The main problem, though, is this is lacking a lot of the features that you would get from ROG, which ASUS has built up a reputation on quality and feature set. So because of that, this is not going to score very high. And the other thing too is the price point on the Tough is similar to what you would get from like a Tomahawk or something in that line from a competitor, which overall those motherboards offer better value. So this is going to be in C tier, unfortunately, for the Tough. So next we have ASRock, and ASRock only has one new motherboard for us to discuss, but this one new motherboard seems like it's the one thing that ASRock needed, because this new Taichi OCF, this is their overclockers board. This is basically the ASRock equivalent of the ROG Crosshair Apex that we just gave an S tier rating. So this thing basically can do all similar things that the Apex does. They even have the open X4 slot up here at the top, just like the Apex. It has the two NVMEs right there. You can remove the heatsink on the second NVMe and install a full 16 lane based device if you wanted in the X4 slot, because it's an open slot. So very good. It has the dual 5090 support, so you got your dual X8 or your single X16, both Gen 5. It has the lever that doesn't scratch your GPU like the ASUS one was known to do, unless I think the newer ASUS ones may have addressed that problem with the Q latch. So you don't have to worry about anything like scraping the GPU here. Voltage checkpoints, manual overclock, up steps, clock increase things. They got all the buttons for the overclocking crowd. But this motherboard, just like the Apex, this motherboard is surprisingly good for someone who is not really going to overclock and would just want to use what the motherboard offers. And so one of the things that this motherboard does that kind of like makes it really stand out from the competition is the fact that this motherboard literally has 6 SSDs on the board. 6 SSDs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. And the crazy thing about this motherboard, you can populate all 6 SSDs and your GPU can still run at full 16 lanes. Yes, I'm going to repeat that. You can run 6 SSDs off of the Taichi OCF and maintain 16 lanes of Gen 5 to the GPU. So ASRock has really gone above and beyond in terms of thinking outside the box and making some clever decisions on how to achieve this type of capability, because pretty much no other motherboard on the market can do what ASRock has done here. So because of this, they have a one of a kind. And the one trade-off is that it only has 2 SATA ports. So you can only do 2 hard drives or 2 SATA SSDs off of this board, because they took those Gen 3 lanes that could have been used for the 2 additional SATA, because most X870 boards have 4 SATA, and they took what could have been 2 more SATA and gave you another NVMe. So one NVMe has 2 lanes, and most of the NVMEs are like Gen 4 lanes, but then they have the dual Gen 5 SSDs, and they're basically doing what MSI did with the bandwidth sharing between the USB 4 controller and your second Gen 5 SSD. So ASRock has basically copied MSI to give you that second Gen 5 SSD. They've taken 2 lanes, what would have been SATA, and give you another SSD. If you subtract those 2, that would be 4 SSDs. So your standard 4 SSDs plus the 2 more using the special capabilities that they've chosen to do, and now you're at 6 SSDs. So they have something truly unique that stands out from the competition, because they have really thought like, okay, how many SSDs do people want? How many hard drives do people want? You know, like backplate included, you know, like a full backplate. And the crazy thing about this motherboard doesn't cost anywhere close to what the Apex costs. So 5 gig LAN, you know, Wi-Fi 7 clear CMOS. It has dual BIOS. Dual BIOS. That's because it's for the overclockers. So USB 4, all that stuff, fully loaded I/O, dual BIOS switch on the back, very, very nice. Optical audio. I mean, this board, surprisingly, I know it's meant for overclockers, but I really, man, I wish ASRock or somebody had a board that could do 6 SSDs like this. but it also had 4 DIMM slots for memory. But man, what ASRock has done here is kind of a one of a kind. They have something special with this OCF, and for that reason, this one's going to be S+. Yeah, this is the 2025 S+ motherboard out of all the new ones. Tai Chi OCF, something truly unique. All right, last but not least, Gigabyte. So Gigabyte, to summarize, this is going to be the redemption arc of Gigabyte. Most of these new motherboards are X3D branded motherboards, and the X3D branded motherboards are the good Gigabyte motherboards. That's kind of the TLDR version of this. To start off, we're going to talk about the one motherboard that is not X3D, and that one is going to be the Extreme AI Top from ASUS. This one was previously their flagship motherboard. It launched late. It was either the very, very end of last year or early this year. But this one leaves a lot to be desired. It does have very good M.2 cooling. It can do dual 5090s because it has the dual X8 Gen 5 capability. This is actually the only lineup of Gigabyte's original X870E lineup that can do that. The rest of them couldn't do that, but this one can. This is kind of like a $700, $800 motherboard. It has dual 10 gig LAN for the people that would benefit from that, which I think are very niche. Most people don't need dual 10 gig, but they did dual 10 gig. Now, where this thing kind of falls apart is the fact that they left lanes unutilized and overutilized lanes on the Gen 5. So there's a bunch of like weird design choices that they did here. So questionable things like, for example, there's only 4 M.2s. The fourth M.2 only has 2 lanes of Gen 3, and it shares those lanes with the bottom PCIe slot, meaning the bottom PCIe slot is only X2, which is only really good for a 10 gig LAN, but this thing already has 2 10 gig LAN, so you would never add a 10 gig LAN to this bottom slot, making it kind of pointless. So you'd only ever do 4 M.2s, and the fourth M.2 would be slower than what you find in competition. So strange things like that kind of hurt this board. So for that reason, this one falls in A. It's still an overall good motherboard from Gigabyte. It's the best motherboard from their original lineup, but it's only going to be an A for those reasons. I do not like it when lanes are wasted. I'd rather have lane sharing than have lanes literally not connected to anything and you're charging the customer like $800. I mean, that's totally wrong. Some people might say this should be B for that reason. But I'm going to go ahead and say that I can see use cases where it's still a solid choice. The dual 10 gig is solid components, everything. So it's going to be an A. But here's where things get really interesting. The remaining 4 gigabytes from Gigabyte are so good. They're some of the best motherboards to have come out this year. And they kind of have a whole different spin on how Gigabyte thought about using the chipset lanes and the CPU lanes on AM5. So the first one we're going to talk about is going to be the Aorus Master X3D. The Aorus Master X3D, fully loaded back. It has that 10 gig plus 5 gig, so it matches the ROG Extreme and the Godlike and the Ace in terms of the network connectivity. It has good USB-C, dual USB 4, clear CMOS, but Gigabyte went above and beyond. They added a power and reset button to the back of the motherboard. This is a industry first. No one else that I can think of has done this until now, and Gigabyte has done it. All of the USB-A ports are 10 gigabit speed. It has the Wi-Fi 7, 320 megahertz Wi-Fi 7, so very, very good. Gigabyte's doing their classic slot layout, which is very nice for the thick 4-slot GPUs. You can run dual GPUs. If you're not going to run dual GPUs, you still have an X4 slot that you can pick and choose. Like, do you want that? Do you want an M.2? They put 5 M.2s on their motherboard physically. So really, really good. No longer do Gigabyte motherboards take lanes from the GPU to provide additional Gen 5 SSDs. Now they do what MSI did. It seems like ASRock and Gigabyte copied MSI's secret technique of taking 2 lanes to share from USB 4 for another M.2 because that's much preferred over taking lanes from the GPU, because that hurts your ability to run a second GPU or a second PCIe Gen 5 device. So Gigabyte's boards now are basically on the same level as MSI, but the price points are going to be less competitive. I mean, this is going to be an expensive board, but it has a 10 gig LAN. So the Master X3D Eyes is going to be an A tier board because it basically gives you all the abilities of what you could do on the Tomahawk while providing 10 gig LAN, while providing a lot of different options. Next we have the Aorus Pro X3D Eyes. This is more of a cost optimized variant of the Master. Still very similar, much lower price point, but Gigabyte, like I said, Gigabyte has fully redeemed themselves. I forgot to mention the backplate. Now, Gigabyte, last year, Gigabyte's Aorus Master did not have a backplate, despite being a $500 board. Now, not only does the new X3D Master have a backplate, the Pro X3D Ice also has a backplate. The non-Ice versions will also have backplates. As long as it says X3D, it has a backplate. So it's really nice. So the TLDR, if it says X3D in the name, it's got a backplate. That's the easy way to remember it. But they went and kept those buttons. You got the power and reset button. Really, really good. 5 gig LAN. Love to see it. No more weird lane sharing with the GPU. They fixed all those shortcomings. Really, really good board, man. Gigabyte has redeemed themselves. This is going to be another A. Next, we have the Elite. So the Elite and the Pro, the one difference is the Elite removes one of the USB-C ports, but it still retains all of the other buttons, and it still retains the backplate. So because of that, this is going to be another A. Gigabyte is on a roll. The main difference between the Elite and the Pro is going to be the price. The Pro gives you an extra 10 gig USB-C, so I would prefer the Pro over the Elite for that reason. Unless the Elite has more like front panel headers or something, I don't see much of a reason to choose the Elite over the Pro unless it's like $30, $40 cheaper or something. Otherwise, they're still really good boards. And last but not least, we have the most interesting motherboard from Gigabyte. This motherboard is going to be the X870E Aorus Extreme X3D AI Top. This is the most futuristic looking motherboard from Gigabyte. This fully completes their redemption arc. It has the thickest and best Gen 5 SSD heatsink I have ever seen that ships direct with the motherboard. So you don't have to go aftermarket. It has the best heatsink. I've been saying this for years. Gigabyte's Aorus has the best Gen 5 cooling. And now that statement is solidified through the Extreme X3D AI Top. It has one of the most interesting features about it, besides the fact that it has this LCD screen, it has a chamber for cooling, active cooling on your DDR5. So it can push DDR5 clocks to the max, and it can also help stabilize 4 sticks of DDR5, because 4 sticks in close proximity, all of them generating high amounts of heat, especially if you're running 1.4 volts, for example, they're going to run really, really hot, and that is going to translate to issues with stability. Gigabyte has thought of that with their cooling system here. The other thing, too, dual buttons, dual quick disconnect for your dual RTX 5090s or RTX Pro 6000s. No worrying about scratching the connectors because they're going with the traditional buttons. Everything here is right angle connected, it looks like. It's obviously an EATX motherboard, so it's just like the Extreme and the Godlike. You're going to need a very, very wide, large case to fit this thing. If you want to run multiple graphics cards, you can remove the lower plate here. I like how it's stylized so that you remove this one part, and then you can still have the heat sinks for the NVMEs. It has a lot of NVMe connectivity. So really, really good. 3 through the chipset, 2 through the CPU. So same deal with the Master. Overall, this one is I gotta give this one the S tier just because this one represents the pinnacle of what Gigabyte is capable of engineering. I like the memory cooling chamber design. This would make an excellent looking build while also being top performing. So overall, X3D Aorus Extreme AI Top is going to be an S tier. It's going to be very expensive. I would expect that motherboard to be no less than $900, if not $1,000. It's a flagship product. It puts Gigabyte back on the map. The other thing that I forgot to mention with all these new X3D motherboards is they're all 8-layer PCB. Even the lower cost options, the Pro and the Elite, they're both 8-layer. Last year, they were only 6-layer, so that's why these guys are down in B tier. But now they're 8-layer. So overall, guys, that was my tier list video for 2025 on X870E. If you're in the market for a new motherboard, hopefully this video was useful in helping you think through some of the decisions when it comes to choosing a motherboard, because ultimately you're going to be stuck with that motherboard for several years, and the motherboard, like I said at the beginning, determines what you can and cannot do with your PC. So if you guys found this video useful, let me know in the comments below what motherboard you would go with if you're doing a build this holiday season, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks.